Because I have such a small space to exercise my borders, fulfillment is super important with them independently. But there are certain times that I can do group exercises, especially when it comes to play and impulse control. This session was very much impromptu, so I just happened to set up the camera while I was exercising my Thanksgiving borders. We have Honey, Sora, Truffle, and off camera, who you'll see later, is Mona. Now, the ones that I'm really working with are Honey, Truffle, and Sora, because they are kind of in a play mood. Mona is older, and she is a bigger dog, so she really is just wants to be left alone and hang out on the couch. And so I am asking each dog to take their turn and coming over to play a little bit of tug with me. Truffle's not a big tugger, so you'll see him just interacting with me and playing with me. But while that happens, all the other dogs have to maintain their place. Doing group exercises like this actually helps the dogs that I have bond. They are observing each other, right? They are learning from each other, and we are learning to work as a pack, which I think is pretty cool. This is something that I have been doing with all of my boarders since I got them, since I started with most of them when they were puppies. So a lot of the structure is already set in place, and I have the relationship to be able to do this with my boarders off leash. Now, Honey, she's struggling with this a little bit. She is actually a very, very, very drivey Yorkie. I love it. And so exercises like this can be hard. Now, I'm all about using, body language, spatial pressure, sound pressure, right, to get the dogs and guide them back, especially because this was kind of an impromptu session, so I don't have tethers or leashes on anybody. And so every now and then when Honey breaks, you'll see me walking towards her, trying to get her attention. And I think there was a point that I did end up lifting her when I was working with another dog, just because, sometimes for me, I'm like, hey, I don't want to spend my whole time trying to get you back on the bed. Me and her have the type of relationship where I can physically move her back on the bed, so it's not that big of a deal. As I mentioned before, Truffle is all about the lovies, right? And so when I release him from being on the bed, he just comes and cuddles with me, but I still turn that into some kind of game where if I get silly with him, he can jump and as I pet him. But when I put my hands up in the air, that simply means he has to stop and sit down. Because you can see I stopped right here to put Honey back on her spot, and he kept jumping behind me, right? And so I need to make sure that at no point do the dogs invade on each other's space when I'm working with one of them, because that's rude, right? And some of the dogs that I have some behavioral issues, right? So this is all about teaching manners. Mona, she's being a rock star and hanging out on the couch. This is honestly a nice break for her. Sometimes she has to share the couch with all the other dogs, and so I'm sure that it's nice for her to be able to have that by herself. And with Honey here, you see how excited, look at that tail go, right? So we're doing a little bit of tug. Truffle ended up breaking his stay, but you see how quickly and calmly I just go ahead and reset him. Feedback is super important. So as I'm playing with Honey, you see me giving the other dog some feedback to let them know, hey, even though I'm playing with this dog right now, I'm still thinking about you by letting you know that you're doing the right thing so that they don't try to break. This actually was a cool moment because Truffle almost stepped out and then he corrected himself and went right back on the tether. All this stuff is thing that's not just built with, once in a life or one time thing. This is about building a relationship with these dogs so that I don't have to be yelling. I don't have to be doing anything over the top to get them to understand what I'm asking them to do. Now, these are things that I've worked with them independently, so I know it's a exercise that they understand. But this is essentially how I'm able to keep the dogs fulfilled in my small studio. And, have dogs be able to relax and trust each other, because ultimately that is what sets everybody up for success. Sora, this is her very, very last month of heartworm treatment. And she's a Malinois, right? So trust me, she is going freaking crazy. And with her, it basically just exhibits itself in a very neurotic behavior, which is spinning in circles. She also has a little bit of containment anxiety that we're working on, and that is from living in a kennel for a long time. And so, with her, I'm just giving her light little bites. I'm putting literally the tiniest bit of pressure to fulfill that Malinois instinct to want to bite things, right? I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm doing literally 2 or 3 tugs, putting her back on her place. Now, Sora is a dog that loves physical attention. So me going and giving her little kisses and loving on her, that is actually very rewarding for her. So you see me reward dogs in this exercise a little differently, right? Because every dog is an individual. Every dog learns differently. Every dog has their own quirks. And so to me, it's important to know them as individuals and know what motivates them and what makes them feel good. You see that even though everybody just broke from the positions, I stayed calm and I focused on putting them back on their positions one at a time. Usually I'll start by putting the dog that's the most reliable, because then that show that good example to the other dogs. And this is not an exercise that I would do with brand new dogs. I've known all these dogs for a minimum of like 5-6 years. Honey, I've known her for 8 years. Truffle, maybe about like 4 or so. Sora is literally the one that I have the newest relationship with. And so here you can see that I end up using Honey's harness to get her back on the spot, because I'm playing with Truffle, right? I really have to put that boundary with her to understand that she got her time to tug with me. Now it's time for another dog to do so. And I am super strict when it comes to teaching dogs these manners, because that keeps them safe around other dogs. Usually when dogs meet at a resource, that's when a lot of conflict happens, and that is when aggression can escalate if people don't know how to deal with it. And so by teaching our dogs from the beginning to have impulse control and to wait when they're called, and if I'm interacting with another person or another dog, that doesn't involve them until I ask them, we end up setting them for success in with our own social constructs that we now kind of force them to go into.